had like the whole like rise up, reform. I wish I was standing behind here that whole time. Good morning. So I was really thinking about how could I get people to show up on Sunday at 9 a.m. after an after party, and that's why I titled this presentation, How Secrets Can Help You Win. And I thought, maybe these people are coming because they think that I'm just going to gossip and share all about my secrets, which I am. But I'm also really excited to hear some of your secrets. And the reason for this is I have come to understand that secrets and vulnerabilities can really help you win. Are you guys ready? All right, let's tackle this. So when I think about secrets, my personal definition of secrets that I've come to understand is secrets are little whispers that you don't speak out loud because they sound like weakness. And a lot of the things that I shared on my first slide could be weaknesses. So before we go any further, I want you to share one of the secrets that we often don't talk about, that's age. Turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor honestly how old you are. Tell them. All right, we got our ages. I know that this is probably like one of those secrets that you're like, yeah, I'm like 27, which means that you gotta find a job that has health insurance, or you're like, I'm 18, which means you have no experience, or like, I'm 62, which means you'll never be employed by a startup. And so age can actually be one of those secrets that you shy away from. But it also can be used to your advantage. And I'll come and talk about that in a little bit, about how I've used my age as an advantage, even though I had to raise $1.5 million from old white men who never wanted to give $1.5 million to a 22-year-old. So think about how your secrets, how your vulnerabilities can make you stronger. And that is my definition of entrepreneurship. Finding creative ways to turn your vulnerabilities or your secrets into your biggest assets. And here's why that is entrepreneurship to me. I know in anything, friends buy from friends, right? When you need to buy a car, you call up your friend and you're like, where did you buy your car? Or you call up your best friend that is a car salesman and you buy a car from them. And why is that? That's because you trust them, because you have shared vulnerabilities with that person. And so when thinking about sales and growing your company, growing your brand, growing your business, how can you rapidly create friends? And that requires sharing vulnerabilities with them, your secrets with them. And that will make a stronger bond with that person so that you can win faster. So I want to share a little bit about my secrets, because I know you're like, what does this girl have to hide? And with that, throughout this process, I want you to start thinking about and writing down your 3 secrets. And these could be as big as, I cheated on my partner, or as small as, I'm 22. But these are secrets to you. You don't have to share them, but write them down throughout this process. And if you don't know what they are yet, no worries. I have a whole presentation that you get to listen to so you can keep thinking about it. And while I share, keep continuing to think about it. And if you're using your phone, I'll just pretend like you're taking notes, not like, taking funny pictures of me. So now I'm going to go into my entrepreneurial journey and how I have used my secrets to help me win. It all starts out when I was a kiddo. Who here has started a lemonade stand? Yes. Actually, I was reading online, we're hiring around 7 salespeople, and online it said, one of the biggest indicators if somebody will be a successful salesperson if they've started a lemonade stand. And that's because it takes hustle, you have to make the lemonade, you have to go out to the side of the street and be cute and sell your things. My lemonade stand was a little bit different. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and I grew up in Toledo, like only white girl in the neighborhood, Toledo, and nobody was making lemonade stands, but I wanted to make one, and my babysitter was macking with her boyfriend, and I had my best girlfriend over, Dana Lynn Denisio, and we're like, let's create our lemonade stand. And we're 7 years old. This is a lot younger than 7. I couldn't find my 7-year-old pictures. We're 7 years old, and we found my mom's Crystal Light. We're mixing up the Crystal Light, and we're like, we're going to make so much money today selling our lemonade. Nobody was out on the streets because that's not what you do in Toledo, Ohio. But we go out to the side of the road, and we have our lemonade stand, and we're going to sell our lemonade for $1 a cup. And I look around, and I notice that there's construction workers down the road. And I thought to myself, wow, these people look a lot like my dad. They're like white and bald and construction workers. My dad is a land surveyor. And I've never seen my dad drink Crystal Light lemonade, but I have seen my dad drink beer. And so at 7 years old, my friend and I were raiding my dad's beer fridge, going to the side of the road, and delivering beer to construction workers for $5 a can. And what this taught me is how to understand your target audience, playing to that target audience, and I made my first $25. My dad comes home, and he chastises my babysitter for raiding his beer fridge. He's like yelling at my babysitter, like, I can't believe that you drank my entire case of beer when you were supposed to be taking care of my daughter. And I proudly walk out to the room. I said, no, Dad, I did it. My dad turns to me, he's like, you drank my beer? And I was like, no, I sold it. Aren't you proud of me? And then he taught me about cost of goods sold. And he said, well, that means that you need to pay me $12 for my next case. And the reason I share this story is I've learned a lot. First of all, you have to practice legal business practices, not selling alcohol underage, but it did teach me about understanding my customer and also understanding cost of goods sold. So that was my first entrepreneurial experience. And then I got into high school, and in high school, that's when my mom and dad started fighting. Really, really, really fighting. And I'm an only child, and I wanted a way out of the house, out of the situation. I wanted to get my own car so I could leave. And I knew that I could get a job at Target and make $8.50 an hour, but that would not get me out fast enough. And my grandma gave me a button maker for Christmas, and I started making these buttons and magnets and compact mirrors. And I made these silly little designs. Actually, in all honesty, I didn't make any designs. I went on Pinterest and I totally copywrote designs. And then I learned about the fact that you can't copyright because Disney sent me a cease and desist letter because I was putting their princesses on my buttons. Anyway, so I started out by copying people's designs and making buttons and selling them to my friends and family for $3 a button. And within 1 month, I had made over $1,000 selling buttons. And then I started selling them to local coffee shops, and then they would resell them. And then I started selling online, and before I knew it, I became a top seller on Etsy. And that was my big claim to fame. But what that also meant was I was able to make enough money to buy my first car, leave the house when I needed to, and it gave me an excuse for late-night business meetings. This was also the time when I got my first fake ID. And I got it because I wanted to go to business meetings at bars that were 21 plus. So I got my fake ID at 16 years old so that I could go to business meetings. No joke, I actually never drank until 21 because my mom was an alcoholic, so I was scared of alcohol. So I'm going to these business meetings, selling a whole bunch of buttons, and what I was realizing was I was really, really good at selling, and I was really, really, really bad at school. And I mean this when I say I was horrible at tests. I got a 16 on my ACT. If you know anything, it's on a scale of 36, and a monkey got a 14. And this was my junior year of high school, and so everybody says the only way to be successful is to get a college degree. I took that damn ACT 5 times, and the highest that I got was a 19 on the ACT. Somehow, unfortunately, I got accepted to The Ohio State University, and my parents shipped me off to Ohio State because the only way for you to be successful is to get a college degree. And so there I was. I said, "Go Bucks." I love football, and I hate beer, but I'll pretend like I like it. And I still hated school. I did not learn in an environment where, actually very similar to this, where people were like standing on stage and talking to me. So please feel free to mingle amongst yourselves. I won't take it as an offense because that's what I used to do all the time. And I was studying at Ohio State, and I just was not loving it. I was skipping a lot of class and going to Zenshaw Tea, and I would sit there and write about ways that I could get out. And here I was in another situation where I needed to get out. And I really wasn't sure how I was going to get out, but I knew two things. I knew, one, that I hated college, and I knew, two, that the one thing that I seemed to be good at was selling things. And so how could I get out? And I had no idea until, just like 86% of women, I got my period unexpectedly in public without the supplies I needed. No joke, I was at Cover My Meds at Startup Weekend. Has anybody been to a Startup Weekend? Woo! Like, one hand. Oh, got a few more back there. It's a 54-hour hackathon where people come together and they all share their ideas, and by the end of the weekend, you're supposed to have like a profitable business idea. That's the whole concept. I went to a Startup Weekend in 2015, and while I was there at Cover My Meds, I got my period. And in this moment of distress, I'm like sitting on the toilet. This is why I like not being next to a podium, because I typically act out this session where I'm like sitting on the toilet and like really worried. And you know, I'm doing the thing where you wad up toilet paper and then you like look around if anybody has a tampon. Nobody is ever in the bathroom when you need a tampon, by the way. And there's always that coin-operated machine, and you're like, who the fuck carries around quarters? And no joke, my business idea was a bloody massacre, because I realized in that moment that I wanted to dedicate my life to making sure that no one ever had to feel uncomfortable about menstruation, and that everyone had access to quality menstrual products. Because no one should ever be stuck in the bathroom wondering where their next tampon and pad should be. Because I always say toilet paper is offered for free. Why aren't tampons and pads? They all respond to natural bodily functions. And so, the most rational thing that I could think to do was drop out of college and talk about menstruation for a living. So right after that weekend, I walk up to my guidance counselor at Ohio State and I said, I'm dropping out. And this was my first secret that I kept from my entire family. I had left the university. I was only in school, mind you, for 4 months, and I got an apartment in the short north that I couldn't really afford, but there were 3 bedrooms, so I was like, I'll live in 1 bedroom and start an illegal Airbnb enterprise and rent out the 2 other bedrooms. Eventually it got shut down, and then I had to find 2 people on Craigslist to live in that room too. That was a whole other story. We can talk about that some other time if you're thinking about going that route. It's not the best. But I moved all of my things to that area. And the funny thing about OSU is they really do want to trap you there. You're not allowed to have a car on campus for your first year. And so the car that I really spent so much money and time getting was no longer mine. And I then had to figure out how to use the bus system here, and that's very difficult to do. Public transit, please. And I had left the university. My parents didn't know this until they came to pick me up for winter break. And at this point, I had been far out of college for 5 months. And they were like, oh, Claire, it's Christmas. We're going to come surprise you in Columbus. They, too, kept a secret from me. They got a divorce, and I had dropped out of college. And these were the secrets that we were keeping from each other. But here is how my secret became not just a vulnerability, but one of my biggest strengths. So my parents came to visit me. We went to Acre, which is now closed here. We went to Acre on High Street, and I never ate that food that day because we ordered food, and the only way that I could think about telling my parents that I dropped out was as soon as we sat down, I said, I dropped out. And then my dad turns to me and said, we got a divorce. I was like, great, let's focus on your problems and not mine. And when I say that this weakness that I was carrying along for so long of dropping out became one of my biggest assets, is we'll talk about that down the road because it actually became a fundraising strategy. But in that moment, I was so scared to share that secret because I thought that I was going to be judged. I thought that my parents were going to try to convince me to go back to college. They did. It didn't work. And I felt like I was a failure because, once again, the only way you can be successful is to get a college degree. That's what everyone told me. But I was so dedicated. And at this point, my whole philosophy on life became never have a plan B, because if you put all of your eggs in plan A, it will succeed because you do not have an excuse to fail. For example, if my business failed, I didn't have a college degree to get a job. So this had to work. And that's when I designed and built what is now known as Aunt Flo. And we do have that mission of toilet paper is offered for free. Why aren't tampons and pads? Over the past 4 years, we designed and developed this free vend menstrual product dispenser so that hundreds of companies across the United States could offer our menstrual products for free in their bathrooms. This looks really cool, but this is where we started. So, me being me, when I dropped out of college, I didn't really tell my parents, and I was like, I can figure this out by myself. And I went on Alibaba. Who's ever been on Alibaba? I really love Alibaba. I'm an investor in I invest in their stock. You should too. No, don't take my investment advice, but look into it yourself. Anyway, I went on Alibaba, and I found tampon manufacturers, and I bought an entire truck full of tampons and pads off of Alibaba. And I was like, great, we'll just sell them. And we'll sell them out of my apartment in the short north, which is technically Victorian Village. I had this apartment 3-flight walk up, and my 2 random Craigslist people that were also living with me. And this truck arrives with all of my tampons and pads in it, and it was just me. And I carried up an entire truck full of tampons and pads, and then I decided that I was going to put them in little boxes and sell them, and that's where we started. The only way that I could afford this, though, I did have some money from my button company, but I started nude modeling. I literally went on Craigslist. Craigslist is where I find a lot of opportunities. I went on Craigslist, and I typed in quick money because I needed quick money because I had just purchased $25,000 worth of menstrual products, and it was net 30. So I had 30 days to find $25,000. So yes, I started a crowdfunding campaign, but in addition to that, I needed to figure out what I was going to do. And so I started nude modeling for figure drawing classes, and then more and more and more. And when I started nude modeling, there was something really powerful that happened. And this is my second secret. I don't often share that I nude model, but when I do, it's because it's so important to me and so powerful to me, and it is a part of me. What I have learned is that my secrets are some of the most valuable things for me, or the most valuable opportunities to learn. And so when I started nude modeling, I was in a variety of sketchy situations, but it was also in a variety of the most beautiful situations that I've ever been in. One of the places that I used to nude model was Wild Goose Creative, and the first time that I went in, I was taking my clothes off. And when I was in 4th grade, I was blind. That's a whole other story for a whole nother conversation. But I was blind, and they put me on a whole bunch of steroids, and I weighed 130 pounds when I was in 4th grade, which is more than I weigh right now as a 22-year-old. And my body expanded, and then it shrank. And so I have stretch marks all over my legs, all over my underarms, all over my belly. And I never wanted to show that to anyone. Even in high school, in prom, the one time that I wore a short dress to show my legs was for prom, and I put foundation over all of my scars so that nobody could see it. But when you're in nude modeling, you have to stand in front of everybody naked and show everybody everything. And that was the first time that I came to understand that my body could be beautiful, because these artists were looking at me for my beauty, because if they didn't, their art would be ugly. And it was in this moment of vulnerability that I found my biggest strength. And that was that I could love myself as it was. And I have never put foundation on my scars again. And after I started nude modeling, I never stuck my finger down my throat to vomit. So it was nude modeling that brought me out of something very scary that I was hiding, which was my hatred towards myself. This is my secret number 2, that I nude model, and I still do it. And I started nude modeling because I had this bigger vision of developing Aunt Flo. And we have this concept of people helping people, period. And the reason that I started the company is I wanted to make sure that everyone had access to menstrual products. And I wanted to do everything that I possibly could to make this vision a reality, because once again, I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have a college degree, and I needed to make this work. So I nude modeled. I sold I started a website called customhanddrawnboobs.com so that people could, write in, and I would draw them boobs, and then I would send them out for $9.95, and that was when sales weren't working, and I was like, what's gonna go on? I'll figure something else out, because I knew that I wanted to change the world one cycle at a time. And at this point, I'm still 19 years old, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't even drink alcohol. But I had this vision. And I knew that I wanted to grow this company so that it was bigger than me. But I was also only 22 years old at that point. I'm 22 now. And how do you create something so big when you're only 22 years old? My secret number 3 is that I'm 22 years old. And the reason that I never shared that with anyone until recently was I was nervous that people would say, oh, well, sweetie, you're only 22. Or like, oh, that's a really cute hobby. Or, oh, I'm glad you're working on that project. No, motherfuckers, I'm running a business. And that's why I didn't share my age. I didn't want people to downgrade me because I was 22. I wanted them to upgrade me because I was hustling my ass off, and I am 22. And so I never shared this until I had to. And here's when I had to. When I started to raise money for my company. So we got to this point in the past 3 years. Aunt Flo has grown to stock hundreds of companies, middle schools, high schools, universities across the United States. We stock everything from Princeton University to Bronx Community College to all of Google North America, Twitter, and Viacom. And we'd done this bootstrapped. By bootstrapped, I mean I nude modeled, and I never wore boots because you're nude. And I did this because I raised a crowdfunding campaign for $25,000, and so many members of the community in Columbus said, yes, we want to support this. And I did this through sales. And then 3 years into it, I was like, I want to make something bigger than I am, and I need outside capital to do this. Raising money as a 22-year-old can be very difficult unless you turn your vulnerability into your biggest strength. And I learned over 86 meetings that I could close $1.5 million as a 22-year-old. And I did this because I spilled all of my secrets. Remember how I said that people buy from friends? Well, people also invest in friends. And I knew that one of my biggest ways that I could win was to build friends with my investors. Because I knew that I had some metrics, but not all of them. I knew that I had some of the team, but not a full team. And so how could I connect with these investors to be able to convince them that this was a good idea? And the only way that I could do that is letting all of my secrets out. So, at this point in time, I hope that maybe you have considered some of your secrets, things that you have been hiding. I'm going to review mine, and I'm going to reframe them on how they have become some of my biggest assets. So before I go any further, I would love for you to make sure that you're writing down some of your secrets. Now, once again, you can cover it up because these things are kind of scary to share, and radical honesty is difficult to practice. And your secrets are, when I've done this presentation in the past, people are like, well, Claire, nude modeling isn't that big of a deal, but it was a big deal to me. And your secrets are very similar. When you share something to somebody else might be like, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal, but it's a big deal to you. So I understand that writing it down on paper is difficult. Go ahead and do it. You don't need to share it. Here are some of mine. As I mentioned, I dropped out. And how did that turn out? Dropping out was one of the most powerful things when I was talking to investors, because here's how I framed it. I said, look, the value of me is that I am so committed to this company that I have left university to dedicate my life to building Aunt Flo. And for investors, they're like, oh my God, she's so committed. She's never gonna leave this company. And I was like, exactly. My second, I nude model. And you might be thinking, wow, investors are creepy as fuck. But this is how it became an asset for me. I shared my personal story of overcoming personal self-doubt within my body and overcoming what that means for me as a young woman with vulnerability around what my body looks like. And my first investor had a very similar story. And she told me, Claire, I'm investing in you because you allowed me to do something I never would have done. Before she invested, she nude modeled for her first time, and she had a very similar experience to me. And she invested in the company because we became friends. So one of my biggest vulnerabilities of how I went on Craigslist and started nude modeling became one of my biggest assets. The other benefit is every time I nude model, I gain confidence through every session. So I make it one of my meditative practices that once a quarter I still do nude model. Now you're like, Claire, let me see your nudes. Here they are, and they're gone. One of my third secrets that I'll share with you today was something that I held very closely, which was my age. And that's why we started out today with sharing your age. Who here has lied about their age? Few folks. Okay. Why did you lie about your age?
Because in this industry, sometimes when you're too old, they don't think it's
Yeah. And I felt that when I was too young, right? It's crazy. And so when I thought about my age, I thought, all right, people might not take me seriously because I'm 22. Or people might not believe that this is actually a real business because I'm 22. And people might not think that, I'm capable of this. But when thinking about my age, it could actually be a really good media opportunity. There's nothing better than a Forbes headline of 22-year-old drops out of college to start a tampon business. And so that's how I leveraged my age to be one of my biggest assets and benefits. And your age story might be a different story. Maybe you are one of the elders in the creative industry, and your age can be reframed to something else. And that is what I call entrepreneurship. Finding creative ways to turn your vulnerabilities into your biggest assets. So, I've talked about you writing down your secrets a few times now. Who here's done it? It's okay, I never followed directions in school either. Have you thought of some? You don't have to share, just you've thought of some things that are maybe in your gut, that you're kind of even getting like a ball in your throat that you don't want to share. You know what I'm saying? Like those kinds of secrets? No? Okay, that's fine. So those ball in your throats kind of secrets, the ones that almost feel like they're going to come up but you shove back down, those are the kinds of secrets that there is truly an opportunity for reframing. And Now I'm going to have you have the opportunity to think about that. And when I say that, we're actually going to play this cute little song, Oh Bajigger. We're going to play this cute little song called Secrets by Mary Lambert. It's one of my favorite songs. And while we're playing this song, I want you to really think about those secrets and spend the next 2.5 minutes reflecting on those secrets. You don't have to come up with a solution on how to reframe them, but you can close your eyes and start thinking about those secrets. And if you want to talk to your neighbor about it and start practicing radical honesty, go ahead. You have some time. Can we turn it up a little bit? I don't know how to do that. Y'all didn't think you were going to have to do work this morning, did you? All right, I know you're all having that ball in your throat and you're like, holy fuck, when is this gonna stop? So I'll stop it now. But this is oh, shaboogie. Oh man, they trained me on this. Man, I'm sorry. Oh wait, there we go, I got it. Okay, so the reason that I continue to emphasize these secrets is you can use them however you want to use them. Of course, they're your personal vulnerabilities and it's your story to share. But from my personal experience, entrepreneurship means to me finding creative ways to turn vulnerabilities into your biggest assets. So you can take this project home, you can listen to Mary Lambert's secrets and like jam out to figuring out how you're gonna work through that ball in your throat, because you should never feel that ball in your throat. You should spit it all up and feel it. Because every time you feel it, somebody else will feel it. So that is what I have to share with you today about secrets and how I have used my secrets and my personal vulnerabilities to build what is Aunt Flo. Thank you.